Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods for round 24 of the 23 season. The Swans let up a second half lead again but as the Dees get over the Swans in front of a big crowd, we say goodbye to Buddy. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods. Swans! G'day there, Cygnets and Swanlings. My name is Chris, and I'm here with the Sultan of Free Kicks, Stevo. Stevo, welcome back, mate.
Thanks, mate. We didn't win, though, and I'm kind of used to winning. It's been 6 weeks, and I've been doing quite a few the last month and a half, and this is the first one that we haven't won, so I guess it's not going to be as cheerful as the last couple.
Yeah, I know. You've had a really good run. The whole of Swans community applauds you for it. We needed you to come at this point. But, hey, we're here. It's the last game of the season. We've got ourselves in the final. We'll get stuck into all of that. But just before I do, the bevy is going hard and strong into this season, into the final season, and this whole year we have done. And, of course, the AFLW season as well. So if you want to support your bevy, make sure to do something simple like follow us on Spotify or an Apple Podcast, follow us on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or wherever else you get your your socials information. It does come across as very appreciated, and the growth of the channel is very good. So thank you everyone who's done so far. Let's get stuck into the game though. Last Sunday, in front of an enormous crowd at the SCG of 41,000 people, our Sydney Swans were defeated by the Demons by 21 points with a final score of 7-14. 56 to 11-11 77. All right, Stevo, over to you, mates, for the first impressions.
Oh, yeah, the crowd looked huge. I was watching on the TV from here, and it didn't look like there was many seats there. So yeah, good to see so many people turn up for the last home and away game of the year. And yeah, look, it was frustrating to lose. It's never good to lose. And we kind of got in that winning feeling, like that habit, and you get that rush, and you kind of get used to winning. And then we ran into Melbourne, who, okay, they were guaranteed to finish in fourth. They didn't have any ladder rise or fall to play for, but they're still one of the favourites of the Premiership, and I reckon probably one of the top two favourites of the Premiership, really, 2 or 3 certainly. And we led them by 3 goals in the third quarter, and then they just ran over the top of us, which was disappointing. But we're in the finals, man, and like, come on, after round 17 this year, that's like 6 weeks ago. We'd lost to Richmond. We were in the bottom 4. We were 15th on the ladder. And funnily enough, at the same time, the Giants were 10th. They made the finals. Carlton was 11th. They made the finals. This is the best bit. Essendon was 5th. And Geelong and the Bulldogs were all in the 8. And now it's all gone topsy-turvy, and we're in there. And here we are. So off we go into the finals, which is a final series that even a few weeks ago, honestly, in the middle of that 6-match winning run, I still didn't think that we'd probably get. So I just want to enjoy it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's it. The great part about having this bye weekend is that we actually get to breathe some air and just kind of look back at the regular season before the rest of the season kicks in, right? And so and we've spoken about this a couple of times, just how massive this season's been, how long it's been, and the ups and downs of the Swans in particular, and the fans themselves. So it's been huge, and so we're being able to just to kind of enjoy it for a week. But then come 3 days from now, when we just get stuck into thinking everything about this final against Blues, it all goes out the window. But this episode is exclusively a review episode of the game at round 24 against the Dees. We will do a separate podcast specifically for a preview of the Blues final. So keep that in mind and make sure to watch it as it comes out early next week. Mate, one of the things that I loved about it was a big event, as you mentioned, pretty much a full house. Everywhere around the O'Reilly stand, the O'Reilly rabble was pretty much seats were taken. We normally can sit anywhere we want and everyone just kind of makes it up as we go around there, but not so this week. We had to sit in our allocated seats because it was a packed house and it was really great. And as you could imagine, a lot of people were there to see off Buddy for his last trip around the SCG, most probably. And even got to see some tears welling up in old Buddy's eyes. So it was pretty special for me, man. Did you manage to catch that on the telly on your side?
They put a bit of it on because I have, like, in Finland, I buy this like international AFL streaming package which you can use anywhere outside Australia, I guess. And they take the Fox Footy feed most of the time, like whatever the coverage on Fox Footy channel is what we get beamed through, and they show bits of it in halftime. Like, probably I'd say like a quarter of his lap, maybe a bit more, which was nice. It was good to see that. And then someone told me, I think my dad, I was chatting to him during the week, and I think he said that the full lap is actually uploaded maybe on the Swans website or on their social media or somewhere. He mentioned it, so at some point I'll dig it out, because it'd be nice to actually see him walk around, because like I know where you guys sit and I know where my mum and dad sit, and it'd be nice to sort of watch him walk past those bits as well. Would be cool.
He was really like taken aback, I think, to effectively see a full house getting up there and cheering for him and standing up, and everyone stood up for pretty much his entire lap. At least 4/5 of it until we kind of eased up somewhere. But it was super special, and to hear with the kids and Jacinta, it was just nice. And there's always rumours about him going up there and coaching up and helping the coach up in Gold Coast now that they're going to probably move over there. And frankly, good on him. Like, the guy's an absolute champion. He'd be a credit to any club, and has been a credit to any club he's been a part of. I could never have asked anything more of what he's given to the Swans. So huge stuff. Mate, let's get stuck into the game. There's a few talking points in particular, and one thing that I'm sure that everyone out there wants to hear our opinion on how we can work it through is our fourth quarter blues. We've let out a fair few leads, mate. Do you want to take it away with some of the names and games that we've missed out in that fourth quarter?
Oh, listen to this. And this is the most in the AFL this year. In the official stat is that 5 times the Swans have led at 3/4 time and lost, but then there's also that one where we led at 3/4 time against Geelong and drew. So it's like 5.5 really wins that have gone begging on the back of this. There was that early game in the season with the famous Ollie Florent point where we lost by 2 points, and all these ones I'm going to mention we've led at 3/4 time, but I'm going to say the game high lead that we had, which might have come earlier than the third quarter. So in that Port game, we led by up to 25 points in the second quarter, lost by 2 against the Giants. Again, the Toby Green took us to the cleaners at the end. We lost by 1 point, having led by 24 in the final quarter, which was incredibly frustrating. Against St Kilda, we led by 20 in the second quarter, lost by 14. Against the Cats, we led by up to 14 in the third quarter. We drew. Against Richmond, it's a pattern. Against Richmond, we're up by 26 in the second quarter, lost by 13, and then against Melbourne, like we just saw, we're up by 17 points in the third quarter, like with a couple of minutes to go, because they went pop at the end of that third quarter. So we're up by 17 points, well into the third term, and lost by 21. So that's 5.5 games. That's 22 premiership points just laid on the table, which we couldn't quite get our hands on. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Even just winning 2 of those games drops us into the top 4 almost, right?
Yeah.
So it's just not really indicative of maybe where we could have. Obviously, it's not indicative of where we could have been, and it's absolutely indicative of some issues that we've got within the club and the players and the general sense. Do you? So straight over to this. Do you see anything blaringly obvious with the way we're playing in our second half to have dropped these leads? Because as we walk into finals, we're going to play, the best of the best teams. Every single team on that ladder is damn dangerous and can top anyone at any one given time. I agree with you what you suggested there earlier, and suggesting that the Dees and I would imagine Lions would probably be my 1-2 favourites, and with the Pies not far off that. But of those 8 teams, every one of them is scary. And so we've got ourselves, no jokes, ahead of us. It doesn't matter who we play. And the fourth quarters are going to have to be wrapped up. Otherwise, we will be seeing the exit door very, very quickly. Anything obvious to you, mate? Or do you have question marks of what it could be?
Yeah, and one thing you just mentioned then, like you talk about the other dangerous teams that are in the 8 with us going into finals, and we're going to go into elimination final against Carlton next week. We lose that, it's over. A lot of these teams that I just listed are in the finals too. Like Port's in the finals, Giants are in the finals, St Kilda's in the finals, Melbourne's in the finals. That's 4 teams. And then, to be fair to the season, we also got away with ones against North Melbourne and Adelaide, where we won very close games on the back of luck, really. So let's say still there's 3.5 wins that we could have had that we just left begging, and yeah, give us 1 or 2 within them, like half of them, and we still probably sneak into the 4. I don't know. I think in the last quarters they seemed to, the Swans, I think they were very good at blasting out, and they'll build a lead, and I don't know what it is, whether it's just the energy that gets expended building that lead, and then eventually something has to give, because football, we see it's such a momentum game. and especially with the 666 rule with the positioning at centre bounces now, it's easier to pile on a score quickly when you've got your tail up than it has been in previous years, and the Swans are good at that. We pumped on 4 quick goals against Melbourne in the third quarter, but then we conceded a run of 6. And you see this quite a lot in football, and I think it's just a matter of mature teams are better at being ahead at the end, and the Swans are maybe just not quite there.
Yeah, that's a fair call, man. I'm trying to look at the stats, and yeah, obviously trying to bang it over an entire body of work throughout the season, and all of the games that you mentioned there is quite difficult. So I'm trying to just look at the latest game. So looking at the Dees game in itself, we know that Petrarca and Oliver are the best 1-2 punch in terms of contested ball and just dominance out of that middle. And Track was basically pushed up a bit more forward, and it seemed like we really had no one to run with him. We had no one to really keep up with him, and he was given free rein to do what he wanted when he wanted, and we didn't really slow him down. There a couple of moments there where his matchup was like with Lloydie. That is not a matchup. Lloydie is not the most efficient tackler in the world. And a couple moments there when Lloydie was wrapped around him, like he had his arms as best he could anyway around that enormous Italian frame. He just couldn't lock him in. And Petrarca didn't even. He just kind of like wiggled his elbows a little bit, got his arms out, and then passed the ball off. So it just seemed like we didn't have anyone to go with him. In the meanwhile, though, on the side there, Oliver was kind of held to task pretty well by Millsy, who had a fantastic game himself. But even he got off the chain. So a couple of stats in that third quarter when the real damage was done, when we got off to that lead, as you mentioned there, and then they banged on another 6. But when the tide really changed, this was the stats for Oliver and Petrarca as my bloody laptop just went to sleep. Oh, here we go. So a quarter for Oliver and Track. 11 and 8 disposals between them. 6 and 6 contested possessions. 2 and 2 tackles and 2 and 2 clearances. So that was probably their most. It wasn't probably. That was their most dominant quarter, and it seemed like the damage was done, and we were just too slow to pick them up. Do we have a problem with being able to pick up a player? Do we not have someone of strength and run to go with anyone like that?
I mean, Petrarca certainly ripped us up, and I think there's a tendency when we look at how we've been going in these final quarters to think, okay, what are we doing wrong? Like, what are the deficiencies in the Swans game? But then there's also the other side of that, and of course there's always stuff you can work on, but then the other side of that is, well, if we just think back to the 2 most recent ones that we've had, which is Adelaide and Melbourne, they both played blistering football in that final period of both of those matches. Like, they really, really played at the top of their game. And it's very hard to maintain that intensity for 4 quarters. There's going to be periods where it comes and goes, and I think if we can look at it and think, we never question the fact that we kicked 5 goals in a row, but then when the other team kicks 5 goals in a row, like, what happened? Something has gone wrong. So there's always the 2 sides to it, and then you look at a player like Petrarca, who's just a freak. Like, he's one of the elite power players in the AFL. He's incredible, and when he's on, there's not many people who can really reel him in. In the first quarter, he got, like in the first half of that game, he got 4 touches in the first quarter, he got 5 in the second quarter, and then in the second half of the game, he went mental and he got 11 and a goal, and then that was in the third quarter, and 9 in the final quarter. So 20 touches and a goal in the second half of the game compared to 9 in the first. So for the first half, we did well. We didn't really suffer at his hand too much, but then he just unleashed. And then I don't know who you put on him when he's in that mood. Honestly, he's a freak.
I don't know how too many players in. I was going to say, just say I could pick any player in the entire league to sit on him. I mean, outside of Finn McGuinness, Finn McGuinness is known as a good tagger and has done some pretty good job over some certain players that have been known to not deal with the tag very well, like Neil, for instance, who's not been able to shake tags throughout his career. But I don't know of anyone in the league that could keep up with Petrarca outside of Petrarca if you cloned him. So he's just that kind of Dangerfield kind of power. He's explosive, he's big, he's just hard to track. So it's really, it's one of those things where I don't really know how we can correlate what happened in this last game and the other games. The first thing that comes to mind that I saw definitely with the Adelaide game is just fitness. I just felt that we just couldn't go. We weren't getting to the ball quick enough. Where the drop of the ball was, there was an Adelaide player and not us. They double tagged us in the right places where it made sense as well. It just seemed that they were systematically better as well as just being more energetic and being able to get to where they needed to, whereas we were really in the back foot. So to your point, expending all that energy to get those leads out and then just having to tail out that game, it's a bit of a it's obviously a bit of a thing. It's no joke. These guys are going full hard, and if we look at some of the numbers of the players that were running hard throughout the game, I think Matt from the Bevy might have posted it in our chat, and I think it was Deal Stevens with like 16 Ks, Logan with 14 Ks, there's a couple more 14s in there, and it was us working super hard getting around, but it didn't seem to really make a difference when at the end there, it seemed like we were kind of standing still for the most part. Do you have any feeling that maybe fitness could be a part of it, or as you said there, it's just a matter of like the other teams got off the chain?
Yeah, like I think both teams are always going to have periods that are good in games, but then the better teams tend to make sure that they're the ones who get their noses in front at the end, just like Melbourne did in that game, and they're always going to come at you. But then there's this thing that the Swans are still quite a young team. Okay, this is the third year in a row that we've made finals, which is great, but they are still quite a young list. And I think maybe the expectation that we are able to run out 4 quarters against a Melbourne, and yeah, we did beat Melbourne in the finals last year, but we did that with Paddy McCartan in the team. We did that with Sam Reid, I think, was playing in that match. I don't think he was injured yet then. We did that with Buddy Franklin, and we did that with Tom Hickey, who was at a higher level of his powers than he is now that he's about to retire. So the makeup of our team was different then in terms of experience and that type of knowing what to do in these game scenarios, which the team doesn't really have this year. It's a very young team. Our leaders are pretty young guys, like our on-field leaders, besides a handful like Lloyd and Rampion and Parker and a few others. And it's a big thing to try and go with Melbourne, who, like you said, are probably one of the absolute favourites for the flag. And the Crows a couple of weeks ago, they're a good team too. They should have been in the finals. The only reason they didn't make the finals is because they couldn't manage to beat some of the bad teams along the way. They came and went, They weren't consistent enough. They were very good against the top 4, the Crows, this year. So, yeah, we got out to 40-odd points, but then they're a good team. They're going to come back at us. And they were playing for their season in that game.
Yeah, and they played like it, didn't they? One of the things that I point out, and I'm not suggesting it's necessarily to do this, but I did suggest that maybe from a fitness perspective, Adelaide was a little bit more there. I think Dees are great finishers anyway. They both share one general point. Darren Burgess, who is the strength and conditioning coach for Adelaide, and has been the last 2 years, I think, was for 2 years prior to that during the premiership run, the strength and conditioning coach for the Demons. And prior to that, he's also had time in the director of high performance at Liverpool and the head of fitness and conditioning, at Liverpool and Arsenal, respectively. So the guy is incredibly qualified and is sitting over there at Adelaide teaching these guys how to get the most out of their bodies. And I don't know if there's something to it. But then if I mention that, that's fine. But then we have all these other leads that we kind of let go. And I don't necessarily look at these other teams and suggest that they are much further away than we were. We definitely were missing players during some of these games that we would have liked. But if you were going to make that argument, you could suggest that they were also. So a few things to kind of figure out. I think it may be, I don't know if it's between the eyes or whether it's something like as something that's a general body and conditioning thing, but if we've got to get this sorted out quick smart because the world is watching and they're all aware of it. Mate, any of the other points there before we move on to some other good bad stats?
There's just one other thing that I want to bring up, which is a worry going into the finals, is that our record against the rest of the top 8 is not good. We've won 2 out of all of our matches against teams that are currently in the finals. We beat Carlton, and that was before Carlton got in their run and we're really building and strong, and we beat the Giants a couple of weeks ago. And besides that, we haven't got a single other victory against anyone in the top 8, which isn't that encouraging, especially if we end up playing a top 4 team. If we do get through Carlton, and then we end up playing one of the losers of the top 4 fight next final after that, and we haven't won a single game against the top 4. So that's the other thing that's sort of on the back of my mind going into the next at least one final and hopefully more.
That's a really good point about the Carlton in particular. Like they really, I think after that game, we basically broke them. That's when the board started fighting amongst each other. That's when some fans were cutting up memberships. I remember looking at some podcasts. Oh, mate, and I remember watching some podcasts after the game, and they were legitimately just dropping. They were just like, "That's it. That's the season. Let's move on with it. Let's start trading players." Like they gave up on it, and then they went on a mad run. So that was Carlton's game. That was at the bottom of their ditch, I guess. And against GWE West, as we mentioned to Noddy last week as well, and we brought up in the potty, it took 11 straight goals in order to get up over GWS.
And they were kind of due for a loss too. They'd been on a pretty good run themselves at that time, the Giants. So they were really, they were there to be plucked, I think, at that point. Yeah, but and that's the 2 wins, man. Cutting up memberships. I was just thinking, how do you do it now? Because so many of them are on the I don't know about your Swans tickets, but the ones that my parents have, it's like on an app. So what do you do? Do you just smash your phone on the ground with a hammer or what? That's pretty extreme show of disapproval at your club.
You have to firstly order a membership card, which they probably have to send to you in the mail that they don't send anymore. So there's a lot goes behind it. There's a lot of logistics, and I guess I applaud it. Do I? No.
That's dedicated anger, man. I'm quite impressed, to be honest, with that.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of throwing of. I think these days the new version of cutting up a membership is throwing your scarf at the players as they're going down the race.
Oh wow,
so
that's
happened a few
aggressive.
times. Yeah. That's pretty bad.
Damn.
Yeah. Mate, I'm going to, a couple of things just very quickly. Another unique clearance game, as we've spoken before at length, so I'm not going to get into it too much. We were only -3 in the clearances, but we were -18 in the hitouts. And this is, again, against Gawn, Petrarca, Viney, Oliver, the best, I'd suggest, most dangerous and potent centre game going around. In terms of strength and just pure ability. So that was actually quite pleasing for me to see us still basically keep the clearances on our side, and even the hitouts we weren't getting embarrassed. And if we take it down an extra notch, Hickey against Gawn, Hickey was in hit-out wins in percentages, 30 for Hickey and 48% to Gawn, but hit-outs to advantage, it was 29% for Hickey and only 13 for Gawn. So basically doubled that, triple depending on how you decide to run with the numbers. So Hickey had a great game, and I think he's not leaving anything behind in his last potential 2, 3, 4, 5 games, right? So, good on him. Good to see that. And Bailey Fritsch kicked 5. What is going on there, Stevo? How can we stop these forwards from just kicking bags on us?
Well, Fritsch, though, he's a hard matchup because he plays very well as a leading / undersized tall forward, but then he's also very agile. He's good on the ground. He can kick almost like Rover type goals from general play. So he's a really, really I think he's one of the toughest. And I don't think he's underrated because I think that he's getting the credit that he deserves. But I think that he's one of those ones that if you're an opposition coach, you're thinking, shit, who do I put on this guy? It's like when Isaac Heaney's a different type of player for sure. But he's another one that when you've got him one out in the goal square, like who do I put on this guy to cover all of his skill set? And Fritsch, I think he got a couple on the lead. I think he got one from a good free kick from a hot in the ball tackle. He got at least one from kind of like a snap. So he does it all. And he even busted up his foot or his heel or something, went back off, got it fixed, and came back and kicked 2 more. So, yeah, he's a very good player, Fritsch. He's a tough matchup.
Yeah, he was given loads of room, and I think to your point that's who do you match up on him? And it's like you don't want to have someone spent on him, but if you don't, then he manages to find room like a rover or a small forward. He gets leads like a proper old school forward, and he can also take a contested mark. The guy can do a bit of everything, and he's a pretty bloody dangerous player. So he kind of got off. There was a couple of times there where no one was matched up against him. He was just sitting there by himself in 10 meters of space. I'd love to have that much space in a football field. I reckon I could kick a couple. So not from anywhere further than 25 meters, of course, but it would probably be something useful to kind of put someone on him. So I think Blakey twice kind of didn't have himself on him. I think Foxy was matched up on him at one point, and he kind of got away. So on top of I think our backline is very good, but a player like that to just destroy us is concerning. And really, if I think about it, the only real danger within that forward line. I would have suggested would have been him. So to see him just kind of get off the chain like that, and us not being able to rein it back in again was a bit concerning, especially when he came off, got injured, and came back on again, like you mentioned, and then still kicked a couple. So something to be considered. Mate, Stevens, did you see how Stevens went in the game? Because I thought he had a pretty good game.
Yeah, I think he's been looking pretty good the last few weeks, actually, and it's not surprising. I mean, we talked about this maybe a month ago or so, that what's going to happen. Is he going to be at the Swans in the future? What role does he have? Where does he sit on the depth chart? All of this, and we discussed that maybe the guy just needs a consistent block of games and some confidence that he's going to play, and he's doing it. Like he's coming into his own a bit more each week, I think, which is good. And maybe the fact that McInerney is injured and he knows that until McInerney's not back that he's got the spot. Like maybe that helps mentally somehow. I'm just guessing, but it can't hurt.
Yeah, no, it's a good shout. We were actually, so like I mentioned, it was a few weeks ago when we were just suggesting, we spoke about it, we're like, look, Stevens looked like he was headless, like he really looked upset. His head was down, he wasn't kind of pushing himself into the game, and we didn't know what I was told, but it was a bit of a different Stevens, and the reason I mentioned Campbell is because Campbell was on that kind of what seemed to me like the blindside wing, like the wing that they didn't look to. And so Campbell, all of a sudden, who's typically good at getting himself into a game, he's got a great weapon that they're always trying to utilize whenever they can, and Campbell didn't really get a hold of the ball. So maybe it's more of a problem, not a problem, but maybe it's more that positioning. So we've always spoken about like the forwards, right? That small forward that we have, the pressure role, and the role in itself doesn't allow for high disposals or even high tackles. It's all about pressure racks. It's about doing some extra things. You'll be lucky to score a goal or two, and we just trash whatever player is in that role. The nuffies and the page will be like, oh, that player is useless, get them off, but they're playing a role and they're great. And I just starting to think that maybe there is that positioning, that particular wing is somewhere that whoever sits on that is not necessarily going to get a load of touches, but is expected to be there when it's required as an out. And maybe something to be said for Stevens, and maybe an apology coming up his direction, depending on how he goes. So something I thought there. Mate, we've been banging on for a while. Do you have anything else in the good, the bad, and the stats to bring up?
Nah, just that I agree, like what you said. Like the dead wing can be tough. Wing is a hard position to play. It can be starvation corner, and I think we look too much at the elite wingers. Like we look at Errol Goulden and like the Melbourne wingers, and and the older Dacos from Collingwood. These ones who are just absolutely elite at that role, and then we kind of expect everyone to do that, and it's so hard to do. And yeah, guys like Stevens, Campbell, if they're playing that position, it's probably going to take a while. And some days you have a day where you just don't get a touch because the ball's on the other side of the field. It's rough.
Yeah, it's we've spoken about it. I think winger is my favourite position to watch. It's just wonderful, like the amount of effort and work they're going to do to get it going. And the Dees have what I'd suggest probably the best wingers in the comp outside of maybe Collingwood or half of them, but. It's just wild. So like I always look to them and just go, God, one day if we had that, that'd be amazing. Juzzy was playing really well. Stevens has the potential. We know what Campbell can do. When Goulden was spending his time over there, he's obviously unbelievable. We'll talk about it in a second. So there's option. We can do what we can do. We can make it happen. Mate, favourite moments, missed chances. You want to get stuck into a couple of these?
Oh, look. We were talking about wings, so I'll keep talking about wings. There was that Errol Goulden goal in the first quarter. I think it was our second goal of the game. It was fairly early in the quarter, or maybe in the middle of the quarter or so. And Fritsch had just scored a goal. We were talking about him. He just scored a goal at the other end from a set shot. And then there was the ball up in the centre square. Warner wins a clearance, and Goulden lines up on the wing, like on the near wing, closest to the camera. And as soon as he sees, and what I love about this goal is just his anticipation and his get for, because as soon as he gets a sniff, because it's a bit of a contested ball, it looks like maybe it's going to ping out Melbourne's way. He's on the defensive side of the stoppage, like compared to, I think it was Neil Bullen he was with, and he gets a bit of space separation. And as soon as he gets that hint that we're going to win it, he's out of there. And Warner gets it, hand-passes it out to row bottom, and Goulden is starting 15 metres behind the line of the ball, and he quickly catches up, gets it off row bottom and launches it from 50, and that's a beautiful goal that just shows all of his attributes, really, or many of his attributes. we like everything that he does pretty much, except for this week. He only had one tackle, which I was a bit disappointed in. We can talk about that later maybe. But that's like the one slight on his game this week. He got 40 odd touches and only one tackle. But that goal was beautiful.
Yeah, he's the big booming kick, the hard work rate, the speed, the kind of timely speed that he has.
Yeah, just knowing when to go, hey, because that's so hard to do, and he just does it. Like he's one of those guys that just knows.
Yep. He's two-game player. That's the two-way player. Definitely old. Errol outside of the one tackle, which of course we'll talk about. One quick one for me. It was probably Parker's excellent mark in the 50. I can't remember who was matched up against, but the ball came in, not really favouring him. Kind of was dropping slightly to the side, but he still managed to kind of put a bit of separation between him and his opposition, get one hand down to the ball and managed to take a great mark one-handed while being absolutely jostled by his opposition. So I was a big fan of that. And the other quick one I've got here is Wixie's goal, where he just came in screaming into that goal square and just punted the ball off the ground like Cristiano Ronaldo, and ended up getting a goal. Absolutely ruined himself in the meantime. He looked like he was absolutely trashed. But yeah, good on Wixie, mate. His intensity is much appreciated in that forward line. Any others for you, mate?
No, that's enough. I mean, we already talked about Franklin. I guess that was another thing that I really liked. We already chatted about him, but that was a nice send off, and it was just great that so many people turned up.
Beautiful, mate. All right, let's get stuck into the Bob medal, which is the bevy of blood's equivalent to the Bob Skilton medal. We give 3, 2, 1 points out to the best Swans player, and this week we're going to give out a cat. My soon-to-be mother-in-law has accidentally adopted a number of cats. A cat came around with a bunch of kittens, and she's obviously, oh God, I've got to feed these things, so she's got to look after these kittens. The kittens never took off; they got bigger, and now there's a bunch of cats that live in and around her place. Around her place, they don't live inside. But she slowly got each one of them and neutered all of them so they don't keep multiplying. And now she has a number of cats that live outside, and we're trying our best to try to find homes for them. So there is a beautiful ginger cat by the name of Daffy on the way to 3 points to Millsy, 2 points to Errol, and 1 point to Parker. All right, mate, do you want to take it away with Daphne's new owner, Millsy?
So Callum Mills has got a new cat. That's good. Let's hope he doesn't have an allergy. That would be we'd have to give it to Errol, I guess. It could get passed down the line. Is that the first time you've given away? Because you've given away some random stuff in this segment, but is that the first time you've given away a living thing? I think it must be.
I think it feels like it is. Unless, some of the food that I've suggested to give away has started growing stuff on the back. Afterwards. But yeah, this is the first like mammal. I guess we'll go that far. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations, Callum Mills! You've got a new cat. Mate, he killed it. 30 touches. He was big, and he's been building kind of slowly since he came back from that extended injury layoff in the sort of middle chunk of the season, and he's been getting back up to his good level again, and a couple of sort of more accountable run with jobs seem to have helped bring him into the game a bit more. 30 touches, 14 of those contested, 417 metres. He kicked a goal, and I love it when Callum Mills kicks a goal, because usually it's for me, somehow in my mind, I feel good about the state of the game when Millsy is hitting the scoreboard. He's one of those guys that just seems to know when he needs to kick a goal, and so I like it when he's getting goals. 10 score involvements, which was the most on the field, 12 tackles, which is the most on the field, 3 tackles inside 50, which was the second most on the field, and this list just goes on and on to the point that I've got to scroll to the next cell on the run sheet. 6 inside 50s, which was the third on the field, and 8 marks, which was the best on the ground. So there's Callum Mills' cat-winning performance. Pretty impressive, I reckon.
That's wild. So, like, of the numbers that he was basically best on ground for in many ways, or at least in the top 2, 3, we're talking disposals, we're talking meters gains, we're talking score involvements, we're talking tackles, we're talking inside 50s and marks. Like, the guy had a day out.
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah, absolute day. And also was expected to kind of keep Oliver to task, and did so for a big chunk of the game. So, huge game by Millsy. He can't do it all by himself, but sometimes it feels like he could. Mate, Errol, do you want to take it away with your man, Errol?
Yeah, we're going to go through I'll go through his stats quickly, and then I've got another stat which I really like, which I'm going to chuck in for Errol. I mean, 42 touches, that was the most on the ground. That was the best he's had in his career. That was huge. 27 kicks out of that, 572 metres, 9 score involvements, which was the second best after Mills, and a couple of goals, one of them that we already swooned over before. But the thing I love about Goulden is his kick to handball ratio, and it's just getting better and better. This kid, he's got a beautiful kick, and he loves to kick the football. So in his first season, I went back and checked these, because now we're at the end of, well, we've still got finals, but end of the regular season. 2021, his first year, he got 282 touches with 2.2 kicks for every one handball. Last year, he upped it to 480 touches. He got a lot more of the footy, 200 more possessions almost, and he went up to 2.4 kicks per handball. This year, he's got 620 touches, so he keeps getting more and more of the footy, and he's upped his kick to handball ratio to 2.5 to 1, which I love. I love that number. I think one of my favourite games that he played this year, I think he got like 28 touches and he had like 3 handballs or something.
Yeah.
That's my kid. Kick it. Good boy. He's got such a good kick. Why wouldn't he kick it? He's such a good user of the ball.
I think it was Matt from the Bevy suggested that Errol's left peg is about as closest to sex as you can get on a football field. Just beautiful. Just gorgeous. Just closest thing you're going to see is some poetry. Just amazing stuff. And yeah, but that's a really great showing of stats. So you're effectively showing 200 plus touches, another 80 more touches there the next year, and then the kicks have been continually to ramp itself up there. That's wild. All right, mate, I'm going to round it off with Parker. Parker with 23 disposals, 16 of them contested when we really needed it. 8 clearances, best on ground, and 7 tackles for his effort. I mean, Parker had been a little bit quietish, or at least not been in what it felt like his regular, consistent form, which is typically being able to get a Bob point, but not getting one because he's just so consistent. But he'd just been dropped off intensity, it felt like, the last couple of weeks, and this week kind of came back. So when it's not there, you notice it, and to see him kind of doing his thing is superb, mate. Do you want to say anything about our man Parker?
Every week we say that we should have given him votes, and I'm glad we did this week, because we never do. We always put him like 4th or 5th or 6th in the list, and he always does the same thing every week. He does his job, and this week he gets a point.
Beauty. All right, mate. Couple honourable mentions, of course. Do you want to take it away with a couple on your side?
I got one. I liked Logan McDonald's game, actually. He didn't dominate the score. I think he hit 1 goal 3. He had a couple of bad misses even, which was frustrating. We kicked 7 goals 11. He's not the only one who missed goals he probably should have kicked. But I just liked the way that he was quite a dominant force in that forward 50 in parts of that game, and that he was sort of like commanding that forward 50 and making sure that he was the key target, and he wasn't afraid to present, and he used his strength, he used his smarts. He's very clever in his positioning on the lead. And he keeps showing me these little bits every couple of weeks, like every match here and there, that he's really growing into that strong key forward role. And this was another sort of little mini step for him, which, even though he wasn't the best on ground by a mile, it was enough to make me continually confident that we've got a pretty good key forward.
Yeah, he's ramping up really nicely, isn't he? The Jumbo Jet is collecting speed, that's for sure. One quick one I've got here for Rowie. Rowie is now the outright tackle king at the Swans. I think his 3 tackles that he ended up getting over the weekend has brought him up to 171, which is 1 more than Parker and Brett Kirk. So good on Rowie. That hard work has kind of been recognised now. We've been calling it out since like around 9 or 10 this year. So for a fair while that he was on track to get that record, and to see him do that with a lot of consistency in his tackle numbers is mad. So good on him. Rowie's got a big thing there. And very, very quickly, while we're on the record watch, Errol's actually close to a couple of records himself. So he only needs 2 more inside 50s to match Kieran Jack for most inside 50s in a season for a Swan. But at the same time, also only 4 more clangers. Goulden is only 4 more clangers away from taking this record from our own Chad Warner, who managed to do it last year.
Chad Warner holds the Sydney Swans clangers record.
Yeah,
he's only played 3 years.
I know, he holds the record, and behind him is Parker, and then Parker, Dan Hennebury, Kennedy, Rowie. So let's just quickly identify that this is a record held exclusively by midfielders because they do not have time to really think about it too often, right? So the fact that Gordon's up there is also because the number of kicks that he's had. All right, it's probably up there much higher than a Warner, a Parker, and a Hanbury for that matter. Definitely Kennedy. So when Rowie kicks a few clangers and everyone jumps on his back about it, let's just remember who's there to holding the record. Okay, so just be a bit nice. Anyway.
Oh man. And then while we're still on Goulden, yeah, 1 tackle, 42 disposals, 1 tackle, Goulden. You know, everyone's got to have a weakness, but yeah, and he's normally a good tackling player. Like I'm not being fair, but he's usually tackles quite a bit. But yeah, 1 tackle, 42 touches. Yep. So he clearly wasn't chasing Petrarca around the field.
No, I don't think how he could. Like, it's not the same size. Easy. The one last one for me, Blakey. He had 12 1%ers, second on ground. But just on a general sense for Blakey, a bit of a notice. I think he is really due for a day off. I think he needs the week off. He was, from the very beginning of the game, every single sprint that he had, it was kind of on his haunches. So I don't know whether he got himself winded or something early in the game or whatever. But I think he would be really happy with his week off. So I think that would serve him really well, and then he can get back to his explosive self, which we know how good he was, and we'll get into how he's made himself onto AA in a second. Mate, post-game standings and ladder, we don't need to talk about that too much, of course. We have come in 8th on the ladder now as the regular season comes to a halt, which means we don't get ourselves a home final, but we do get ourselves a game against Carlton at the MCG. So, yay for us. MRO Chad had a sling tackle, it looked like, but thankfully nothing to answer for. I think he might have just got himself a fine for his efforts, so nothing really there. He's good to play for next week, and then gets stuck into some injuries. So, mate, take it away. I'll pass it to you for the injuries. And how we're looking at how getting into the next game and whether we need to make some calls on replacements now.
I guess the two that are not playing, or that didn't play, that you'd think are best 22 is Papley and McInerney. They're both injured. Papley, everyone seems to think will play against Carlton. McInerney, we haven't really heard that much about him. But if Papley comes back in, you would assume that probably Clark would come out of the 22 and maybe go back to sub. And then if McInerney comes in, if he does get back from injury, but then he hasn't got any opportunity to play because the Swans aren't in the VFL final, so he wouldn't have a chance for just a warm-up game. He'd have to go straight in after a pretty long layoff and play in a cutthroat final. If he were to come in, then it's maybe a bit harder. I mean, Stevens is the obvious one, but he's been, like we said, getting better. So that decision is a bit tougher for one of those. But then one of those fringe midfielders would have to come out for McInerney to come back in. But we don't know if he's fit yet. So I guess it's one we can look at next week again when we do the preview, once we've got more of an idea.
Okay, if you were to get off the fence, and I will too, does McInerney come in or not in your eyes for next week?
If I know that he's 100% or close, then yeah.
Okay. Yeah, all right. I feel the same way. I'd suggest that if they just gave him the extra week off just for the sake of just double checking, then yeah, I'm all in. I think he's best, especially in the big games. He's a bit of a confidence player. Like he likes the limelight. He's all about it. So yeah, I think that's the way to go over there, mate. Okay, so we've got ourselves, as we mentioned, the next game is at the MCG elimination final. It's big for us. We got to get ourselves through this bloody game. It is a sellout. It's sold out. I think the tickets for all regular club members went out at 10 o'clock sales, and what I saw about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it noted that there was no more tickets left. So it is going to be no joke. It's going to be wild, mate. Where are you going to watch it from? Just out of interest.
Oh, you don't want to hear this. It's horrible. I was hoping for a Saturday game because I don't know, like June, when everything looked like doom and gloom and we were never going to play finals again in our lives, we were in the bottom 4. I booked a trip to go and visit my brother in Canada. I arrived there on Friday morning, which is when the game is. Because of the time difference, it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. So I'm actually going to be flying in there when the game is going on, roughly. So me and my brother are going to wait and watch it on a replay when he finishes work in the evening Canada time, which will be like 15 hours after the match. And have just got to somehow avoid all internet and social media for that entire period, so we can watch the game, pretend that it's live, which will be nice because we haven't watched the game together for a while. We haven't seen each other since Christmas last year, so that'll be nice. But it's going to be a nervous 15 or 16 hours of not checking the phone.
You're going to have to basically turn off your WhatsApp because the bevy is not going to slow down. You know what we're like.
No, it's gone.
That thing goes absolutely off.
I'm used to doing that in games anyway, all the bevy on that group chat, because often I watch on even like a half an hour, like a slight delay, and there's no way I can have the phone out. That's why I never reply during games. I'm probably on a delay.
It's pretty bad. Like I know how you feel because when I was in Europe, of course, like I'm trying to do the same thing, and you can't watch the game live for whatever reason, and just waiting to watch the replay that afternoon. And I look back at my phone, and I've got it on snooze basically, and I look back at it, it's got like 1,060 messages. I'm just like from just that chat. I'm just like, there's only 6 people in this chat. That's averaging of like 150 each or 200 each. I'm like, what's going on? So then we're not messing around. Look, we were damned if we did or damned if we don't between us. Like I also had my engagement party organized for the Saturday, and it's still organised for that Saturday. So we had a 50% chance of basically missing the game, and there's a few bevy coming to my engagement party, and Noddy was basically, I don't know, disappointed in me would be the way to say
What?
So he was like, I was going to call you and tell you, like, do you know what you're doing? And at the time I was like, I was limited to amount of spots. I had to pick a day, and it was either one day or another, and they were both on bad weekend, so I was like, it's going to have to happen on this day, just choose one. There's a bunch of reasons for the family being available is why we did it on that day. So we were like, please, for the love of God, make it a Thursday or Friday game, please, 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 please. And then we got lucky with the Friday game. So we are being able to watch the game at the Tudor and Redfern, and then on the Saturday we'll still have our phones out to see the rest of the games, but a bit more subtle and maybe slightly less emotion at that engagement party. So.
Yeah, I think it turned out better. I reckon me and my brother waiting to watch on delay after he finishes work is a better outcome than you having to decide between the footy and your engagement party. So.
It would have been so...
It worked out well.
Oh, mate, it would have been so bad. Like, I just know what... I know what I'm like. I know what Brett and Noddy are like, and I know that we would have been constantly looking up at each other's eyes to be like, are we up or down? And we would have had to like work out some form of telepathy or something that they would have, or sign language, or raising the eyebrows for a goal and raising it down for a behind. I don't know how we would have done it. We would have worked out a code for me to get the info, but thankfully we've gone past that and we can just watch the game live. Thank God, mate. There's some big news that came out this week. Over the night, the AA team got finalised, the final 22. Do you want to take it away with some of those?
Yeah, it did. The big news is that we had 2 in the squad of 44 because they name like a 44 squad and then they trim it down to the final 22, which gets named in position. I'd actually like it if they did if they did it like as a genuine second 22 team, like if they named the whole next 22 in position. If they're going to do it that way, it'd be interesting to see. Because then it wouldn't be as easy to sort of just put people in because you think they should be. You had to still justify everyone's spot, like in a lineup. Because it's not a thing.
For instance, like you can't have like 17 midfielders in that last 22. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, that's it.
Good point.
Yeah, so you've got to have your 22, and then who's your reserve 22. I think that'd make it a bit more interesting because otherwise, I think it's a bit unnecessary, the whole naming 44. But Nick Blakey got into that 44, and then so did Errol Goulden. And then when they narrowed it down to the final 22 on Wednesday, Errol Goulden, 21 years old, 3rd season, one of the youngest Swans I think ever named in the All-Australian team, got a start on the wing in the team, which was massive. And he also did very well in the Coaches Award. He got 6th overall. That's the one where the coaches from both teams that play, they vote. They give 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 every week. And the winner of that was Butters from Port, and then Bontempelli, Dacos, the younger Dacos, Petrarca and Lockie Neal were the 5 ahead of him. That's some pretty elite company for him to be in, when it's Butters, Bontempelli, Dacos, Petrarca, Neal, Goulden. That's your top 6 in the coaches prize. That's that's an indication of just where this guy's at.
That's unbelievable. Like every one of those players' names, like Butters, who's just my favorite for Brownlow, should win Brownlow. It's just amazing. You watch him play. Bontempelli, who can just single-handedly win a game. Nick Dacos, who the entirety of Victoria has been frothing over for this entire year. Petrarca, we've spoken about at length today, and Neil, who's captain extraordinaire, all of 5'10", but just an absolute beast of a guy. Those are some excellent names, man. Like, oh wow, this is your guy that you've been calling out since the day he started in the team. You've been so warm on him, and there's never been a question, and now it's all happened. So
yeah, well, since the first practice match we saw, at least I'd never watched him. I mean, you see people's tape and stuff, but everyone looks good in their best 10 things they ever did on a football field on the 30-second highlight reel, and everyone looks good. But yeah, that first preseason game that he played, we were like, shit, this guy's alright. Like he's got awareness, he's got time with the ball, he's got vision, he brings players into the game, he's scanning all of the time, he's clean, like all the stuff. He's got excellent foot skills, all the stuff that you want from a player. Works hard. Yeah, and third season All Australian. There you go. That's all.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned before, he's going to win a bunch of awards. He's going to be tagged many times. He's got a lot, potentially a Brownlow in front of him, and it's just at the beginning of his very long career, and he's already absolutely elite to the point where he's in the best 22 of the competition and best in his role in the competition. So massive, mate. In Blakey's wise, obviously, Blakey was phenomenal this year and held up that back line like no one's business when we really needed him to. He played tall, he played small, he played rebound, he played defensive one-on-one, he played proximity, he played everywhere that existed in that back line. This is a guy who we drafted to be a forward guy, went back, retooled, came back to now be in the top 44 of the competition and top 6 or so, 12 of his back line. I don't know, I'm trying to find the words to say it, but I think we've just been blessed with just the amount of the amount of love that we've provided with Blakey, and he's just given it back by also signing that long-term deal with us. And we're going to have him for a long time, and it seems like the kind of player is just going to kind of get a bit sharper too. So he might see a couple more jerseys his way going on as well. What do you think? Jackets, not jerseys, jackets.
Yeah, they wear those little. They look a bit like the Australian Test cricket blazers. Actually,
yes, they do.
The outfits that they wear.
They look the same as the jackets that they win in Happy Gilmore when they win.
Yeah, that's right.
I kind of really wish that they changed it, but it's a kind of tradition now. But
it's a strange sort of get up. Like it looks like in the picture that I saw on the AFL website, there was like the 22 of them all sat in rows, and they're all pretty young. Like some of these guys, like Goulden and that, they're barely 21 years old, and it kind of just looked like a schoolboy, like an all boys private school photo at the end of the year type thing. Yeah. It was pretty funny to look at. But yeah, anyway, the thing I like about these, like they're both like I think it won't be lost on the AFL world, and it's certainly not within New South Wales footy, that these are both local Sydney products that have come through the academy, and they're both from Sydney region for these two, and that's really important for trying to ongoing develop the code in Sydney. And the fact that Blakey wanted to commit so long, I was actually listening just today. They have this. It's on the AFL website. It's this. It's on Spotify and wherever else, Apple podcasts, etc. The Gettable podcast. It's with Cal Toomey, the AFL website reporter that focuses heavily on the draft and trading, and they had as their guest this week on their podcast Connors, who runs the management company who manages amongst many other people, Nick Blakey, and he was talking about that. When Blakey went for that really long deal, he said, "Look, we said to him, be cautious. You don't have to do this. You can take a few years and then reload and come back." And then Blakey's like, "No, I want to do it." And that tells you that it's a place that these young guys want to be, which I think is a really good thing.
That's actually really great. And whatever that Bloods culture is, that they just keep churning these kids and keeping them like. I was just about to mention that the All-Australian team this year looks very young. I feel that there's a fair few young players, Tim English, Rosie, Butters, Larkey, Jordan, Dawson, Caleb Sarong. There's a fair few young players in this team that the two Dacoses that the competition's kind of churned itself. Like in the last few years, we've seen a lot of players that for like 10 years would dominate the competition. It kind of felt like there was a big churning of players. But we've been lucky enough to keep a fair few of those, and this and the players that are of the like prime age. So you're looking at your Heenies and your Mills. Last year got their AAs, of course, and the youth in the team is so important. And there's a lot of excellent young teams. I don't know what it is about development these days, but they just get going much, much earlier.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. But now that you said that, our last 4 All Australians have all been Sydney Academy. Yeah. Well, actually, Isaac Heaney's from Newcastle way, but he's come through the academy. He lived his last couple of years of high school years, I think, in Sydney while he was playing with the academy. So that's 4 of our last 4 have all come through that pathway, which is significant.
Yeah. So keeping youth, local youth is the secret, I think, to the next few years of the competition. Because, look, I predict that Freo gets himself running pretty hot. We know Adelaide's going to be very good. I think that was a question you're going to ask, Ashley. So I'll leave it over to you to ask that question.
Well, I was just thinking about this. I was listening to a few of the other footy shows and stuff this week, and we're all loaded up and ready for a finals campaign. At the very least, we've got an elimination final coming up, and we're hoping for more. And 8 teams are in a similar situation, but there's 10 teams that are done and they're out of it. And every year, you always see 2 or 3, some's even 4. Last year there was 4 teams dropped out of the 8 and 4 came up. And so maybe you think who would actually, if you had to pick 2 or 3, let's say 2, that you reckon will be in the 8 next year. Now, who would your 2 be?
The first 2 names that came to mind straight away when I saw that question was Adelaide and Gold Coast. Adelaide because they're not far off from being very good. They are some errant kicks and some sharp shooting at the front end, away from being really good, top 6 good. I don't see them being too far off. They've got all the pieces. They're led well. They coach well. They've got a bit of a culture going on over there. I think they're all sorted out. They're a lot further ahead than we all predicted them to be. And the other one is Gold Coast. We know how good their list is. We know how good that midfield is. They are very, very good. They were going to get into the top 8. Doesn't matter who coached them as far as I'm concerned. And now they got Dimmer. And he brings with him some experience and probably maybe is able to keep a couple of the guys that we need to keep. Noah Anderson is an example of that. Flanders is another example of that. And maybe is able to bring in a couple of players, maybe in that front end that they need to really polish themselves off. So I reckon they fall into the top 8 as well. What about you, mate? Sure. What's your eyes?
I'd agree with those. So they were the first 2 that popped into my head. I don't know. I saw Hardwick saying the other day that he reckoned that his inauguration speech or whatever it was that he reckons that 80% of his premiership team is in that list. So I'm like, maybe, but I agree. He'll definitely improve them, and they were solid enough this year. They just couldn't get it done often enough. You'd expect them to get better. Crows, like you said, I mean, they were competitive against the top 4. They beat Port twice. They beat Brisbane. They got within a goal of Collingwood twice, and Melbourne and Brisbane, I think, also. They had a really good year against the top 4, and they just couldn't beat some of the crap teams, and that's kind of how they missed the finals, really. And then a bad umpiring decision against us, which we're happy to take, but it was curtains for their season. The other one I was thinking of too, besides those 2, is the Bulldogs. I mean, they were disappointing this year, and the question for me for the Bulldogs is, are they going to be what they've been promising to be, or people have been hoping they're going to be next year and get back into the 8 where everyone seems to think they should be, or are they just going to drop further off? And I reckon it's on the edge at the moment. There seems to be a lot of discontent down there at Footscray at the moment, so it'll be very interesting to see how they go, because they could easily push back into the 8, or they could just become an Essendon and just float around being irrelevant for quite a while.
I think that's probably the worst thing to say about it.
They could become an Essendon.
I mean, you're going to become an
maybe
Essendon
not that extreme. Well. They could become like a Carlton until now. I don't know.
Well, to your point on that is and I think Essendon is the most interesting case of any club. Just the brutalness, and I just feel for their fans because they get given nothing, and then nothing happens, and then the next year the exact same thing happens, and we're all like, what happened? And the same thing as the last few years. So it is a good point, because I think what part of the problem is, and where the strength of the Swans is, just the kind of leadership from the top down. And we're not talking about coaching, we're talking about CEO, GM level, right? From the top down, you're not necessarily looking at that season. You're looking at the following season, the season after that. You're looking at the next 5 seasons. What is the process? What is the plan for coaching, for health and conditioning, like your players, your everything? You need to it's not just the coaches putting the team on the ground all the week. Otherwise, any team, Gold Coast, for instance, have a great team on the ground. There's a whole lot of other things that are kind of interrupting it. So, suggesting that they may follow down into the Dons pool of just bullshittery, I don't think it's too far off, because I think a lot of the issues that they're going to stem is from the coach above. They obviously have the team on the ground. That team is great. I mean, they're obviously missing pieces, but they've got a great core, like a fantastic core, back, forward, and mids. So, I don't know. Yeah, let's see where they end up. So, okay, so you've got the 3. You're suggesting, Adelaide and Gold Coast, like myself, and you're thinking maybe Bulldogs as well can come in.
Yeah, and if I had to throw in one more, then maybe Fremantle. But I reckon the 2 you said to start, they'd be my 2 best picks as well.
I was about to actually put in that as well. Freo, I think, is going to be fighting for between 7 and 9 or something. Like they're going to be really close, if not in. I think they're quite good. All right, mate. Swans trade rumours. Take it away. I know you love your trade rumours. Let's get into
it. There's a lot floating around at the moment. I don't think we can go into this probably more in detail once the season's finished and things are a bit more settled. But the 3 big names that keep getting attached to the Swans. I mean, there are various ones we didn't get. We didn't get Himmelberg. He stayed at the Giants. We didn't get Barras. He stayed at West Coast. And so there's still this talk that the Swans need a big defender. Ben McKay, the one from North Melbourne, is the brother of the Carlton one, who hopefully doesn't play well next week. If he could have a terrible game, that would be wonderful. He's the name that's being floated around, but then a lot of the gossip seems to be suggesting that he stays in Victoria, potentially going to Essendon of all places. Hawthorn's names have been thrown around as well. So he's a maybe. And then Grundy, the no longer needed ruckman,
the VFL
who is still
playing
one of the
Grundy.
best. Yeah. He's one of the best, probably half a dozen to 10 rucks in the comp, and he's cruising around for KC Demons in the VFL. Like so maybe him, but then there's the suggestion, all of the gossip at the moment is that he'll probably go to Port Adelaide. That's what everyone is saying, at least. And then Matt Crouch from Adelaide, who played well against us a couple of weeks ago. The brother of Brad Crouch from St Kilda, who's also had a really good year. Inside midfielder, there's been talk that the Swans could use a bit more muscle, a bit more strength around the contest, help out some of these younger guys as they develop, and Crouch has been floated around as a possible name. But again, the gossip in the last 24 hours at least seems to be saying that he will stay in Adelaide. He's got a young family, he's settled there. And the sticking point with the Crows seems to be that they're offered him 1 year, and he's after more than 1 year contract, and maybe the Swans could prize him away with a longer contract. But then I think it was Bernie Vince said today or yesterday that he's going to sign with the Crows. So they're the 3 big names, and then after that there's not really much. So I guess we'll be keeping an eye out and letting you know what's being suggested over the next month or so until the trades start.
I think the funny thing with those 3 is Ben McKay is always mentioned to be. They're always. I don't know. It must be his manager saying this. It's like, he showed himself to be one of the most elite defenders in the game. But like, what?
According to who? This is what I want to know. On what grade? He's not. I'm not saying he's crap. I'm really not. He's a solid. He's a solid key defender. He really is. But he's not. He's not he's not a potential All-Australian type. You wouldn't think.
Or maybe he is, and he's just not playing his full line. But I don't see. And if that's the case, then you don't want him. Like if he's not playing his full potential. So that's one thing. The Grundy situation. He wants to head home back to Adelaide. And as far as the clubs that have been behind him, he deserves to head home. Is back to Adelaide at this point. He was dropped at the height of his powers from the Pies. As it turns out, didn't need him in the end. And heads over to the Dees, and the Dees just do absolutely nothing with him and drop him down to the VFL. He's oh my God, it's hard to imagine seeing that kind of quality running around a VFL pitch.
It's a very expensive VFL player too. What?
Yes, that's right. So like to see him wanting to head back home to Adelaide, irrespective of what other offers are out there, I kind of see it as a human being. I kind of appreciate that.
And as a human being, you'll let him go.
As a human being, I'm like,
as a Swans
fair
fan,
enough,
you
man.
don't care about his personal life, but as a human being, let him go.
Well, that's not true. I think as a human, as a Swans fan, I think we've got a good pitch for him. Like we're gonna in the next like 24 hours, we're gonna throw out a pitch called "Where the bloody hell are you, Grundy?" where we can suggest that cafes. He loves his cafes. He's a bit of a hipster. We've got way more cafes than Adelaide do. He likes to surf. There is no freaking surf in Adelaide. What are you talking about, Grundy? Come to Sydney. And he's going to uni, and we've got all the uni. So there's absolutely no reason for him to head over to Adelaide. There's none, apart from obviously family, friends, and everything in between, and friendly faces. There's friendly faces. Look, I'll throw a barbecue every now and then. He can pop over. Like I think we can do things, like we can make it happen. So, yeah, Grundy, I would love to have him.
Maybe you'd like one of your grandma's cats, mate, or one of the
soon-to-be mother-in-law's cats. Yeah.
Yeah. If that, sorry, mother-in-law, not grandma. If that could be part of the salary package.
There is a couple cats. There's obviously a few of them. So one that's Sunny is also a nice cat. So we can always. So yeah, there's another cat. It's not like we're running out of cats here. We've got enough. So yeah, Sunny, that's it. Grundy, if you want to pop over, there's a cat waiting for you. He's a beautiful little ginger cat. He's pretty funny. So yeah.
He looks like he'd be a cat lover, Brody Grundy. There's something about him. I can see that he'd be one with the cat.
The man bun, the big ears,
yeah,
and the geeky glasses. Yeah,
that's it. He's a cat lover for sure. He probably loves cats and dogs. He's one of those who just loves animals.
I'm a cat guy. I also have been sporting a man bun in the past and wear funny glasses. I don't have the wing nut, but I am a cat guy. Well, mate, we better move on.
Let's carry on.
My God, I'm sorry, everyone. There is stuff to be done. Draft, mate. Do you want to take it away with a couple points here to wrap us up?
Yeah. All I really wanted to say about this, I saw. I mean, this last couple of weeks, the West Coast Eagles and North Melbourne have been desperately both trying to not get the number one draft pick by winning games that they didn't need to win, right?
Yeah.
And both coaches, both Adam Simpson and Alistair Clarkson, both made a clear point afterwards to show that they weren't deliberately tanking. Like this was like, we're legit and everything. And Clarkson said something which I thought, okay, after their win, which gave up the number one draft pick last week, he said, number one draft picks, they're kind of overrated. I'm paraphrasing. They're a bit overrated. Only 4 number one draft picks have ever won a premiership. And I thought, okay, fair enough. And then I noticed that a few people in the media had picked this up, a few of these other people who just sort of listen to what Clarko says and report it as news.
And touch themselves and start typing it out again. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Fuck. Anyway, and so Clarko comes out with this throwaway line, only 4 number one draft picks have ever won flags. I'm like, all right, whatever. And then I thought, well, most of them have probably gone to crap clubs. So what are the chances of them getting to a premiership window even in 10 to 12 years of football career in the first place? So I thought maybe that's not the best measurement of success for a number one draft pick, is how many flags that they've won. And also I checked, and only one Brownlow has been won by number one draft pick. That was Adam Cooney of all people, and one Norm Smith medal, which is Luke Hodge, who also accounts for a couple of one of the premiership winning players. But then I thought I'd look at stuff which is a bit less reliant on being in a dominant club in a dominant era. So of 37 number one since 1986, going all the way back to 1986. There are 13 club best and fairest, 12 All-Australians, 5 club captains, 2 club vice-captains, 15 of them have played 200 plus games, and I included a couple who'd played like 185 just because it was close enough to 200, and 4 have played 300 plus. That's a pretty decent cohort of people. That tells me that a good chunk of these number one draft picks are going to be very, very, very decent players for a long time. So let's not take everything that Alistair Clarkson says at face value.
That is such a good shout. That is a lot of third. So basically just under like a third of the BNFs, 12 AAs, 5 club captains, 2 club vice captains, 15 over 200 and 4 playing 300 games. Mate, that is wild. And to your point, they don't go to the best team, do they? And if you're going to if you get yourself, just say North Melbourne's going to get this first round pick or whatever, or somehow manage to get Harley Reid because of some funky trading that they're reportedly going to do. He's going to sit there and wallow with North Melbourne for another, 3 years as they do nothing and probably not get into finals as they're rebuilding, potentially. So, yeah, they're not going to go into finals run. And because they're a good player, they're going to be locked up and they're going to be recognised as a one-club player. And everyone questions them when they decide to move, like Jason Horne-Francis decided to move away from where he wanted to go play for another team. It's his own career. He can do what he wants. So, yeah, it is bollocks in that. So, yeah, Clarko just adding more to his greatest hits of just silly things being said. Thank you.
Yeah, this is why we always, not just in football, in life, be careful with statistics because there's often something else. You know, I could find stats that would probably disprove what I just said if I wanted to.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
All right, mate, let's get stuck into one last thing. A couple of big things to note. Firstly, there's a new Man Grook jersey that was designed by Alicia Newman for the AFL that the girls will be wearing for their Man Grook game, and I think off the top of my head around 6 or 7.
Was it Pies? Was it the Collingwood in Henson Park? Wasn't it? It was one of the Henson home games, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. So that'd be great. So it's a great looking jersey. The Man Grook ones are my favorite jersey. I've got all of them. I think they're amazing. And she designed that, which is fantastic. So get a look at that. Pre-order, get that wearing. It is a good looking jersey. The other thing, very, very quickly, is Hayden McLean signing a 4-year deal to stick with the Swans. This kid has had a standout season, and we get to lock him up, mate. Any quick words to say about Haydo?
Great, and 4 years is awesome too because it shows confidence in the guy and it locks him up for 4 years because I think 2 more years he's going to be even better and the various other clubs will be trying to pull him away. So 4 years takes him into his mid to late mid-20s, I guess, in terms of age, which will be his prime years.
Yep. Perfect. And a quick one here: the AFLW season opener kicks on this week. So Friday night, I think it's the first game on televised, of course, if you're in Sydney anyway, and go out to the game at North Sydney on the Sunday. If you haven't heard already, the Bevy is doing an AFLW podcast throughout the season. We had a pre-season preview last week. Stevo and I did that, and that was released a couple of days ago. So make sure to listen to that. We go into just the general state of the team, how we've quickly got in, a couple of notable players and stats and stuff there, and also about the team coming in and some movement in the off season and what we're expecting from the girls, and a couple of predictions for a bit of fun along the way. So that is huge. Make sure you get out there, get your tickets, get your memberships, listen to the potty. It is all about it. AFLW kicking off. More football is always required at any time of the year, so we're all about that. All right, mate, we've kind of gone a bit over. Any last things in one last thing?
No, just looking forward to the finals and to the AFLW this weekend. It's going to be big on Sunday. Can't wait.
All right, we've got a lot going on, so that brings us to the end of the episode. So, of course, we'll see you at the MCG, also at North Sydney Oval, and if you're in Sydney, at the Tudor in Redfern if you want to watch the final from Sydney. But until then, up the Bloods, and can you Swannies?